Now, hopefully you guys are going to remember where we left off, because we need to now go into, you ready for this? Chapter 5. Because he continues to make the point, okay? I mean, the only verses dealing with the good news are the 2 verses in chapter 4. But we needed 3 for context, and he continues to make his point as we go into chapter 5. So I believe we're going to go there for a couple of verses next, and then we're going to go into Ephesians. But I just want you to understand the whole point of the new covenant is to tell you how to get to, or explain to you that there's another higher level built on the foundation, as it says often, on Moshe and the prophets, etc., built on the foundation of the mechanics. But it's built on the foundation. It's not like a whole separate thing and throw away the foundation, okay? So if we're building a house, okay, and he talks about that in some of the analogies, like building a house on the rock versus on the sand or whatever. So if the Torah is the solid foundation, so now I'm gonna go build my house on a different place. That's what people are saying in the New Testament. We're gonna ignore the foundation that we just built, and it's solid, it's perfect to build a house on, but we're gonna go build it over somewhere else now, with no foundation. Because we took the foundation and threw it away. So we're gonna build our house without a foundation. Anybody ever build a house? Or been in a house? Do you think it would do well without a foundation? Okay? Because that's what they're saying when they do away with the Torah. The law was done away with, but it's the foundation the house is built on. There are other levels above the foundation. You don't live in the foundation. You live on different levels above the foundation. But it's still your foundation, okay? Sorry, that analogy hit after, so it's the beginning of the afterburn, so it's good for the afterburn, okay? All right, Craig.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
I got a question for you, and I do not debate anybody, especially when I have a brother that just absolutely thinks I've lost my mind.
Anybody else have a relative that thinks you've actually lost your mind? Okay, everybody's hand went up. You're in good company.
Well, you know, my mom, as a good Catholic, thinks I'm really lost my mind and I'm Jewish. But anyways, the question I have, I've always wondered, because my dad, before he passed, and when I was being raised as a Christian, he would say, it's all gone, it's past. Where do they grab this information in the Bible that says it? Just like last night when you were saying about Onan, and what the Catholics would think about it, it's not real. So where are they finding this in the Bible? I'd like to know.
No, the same way that last night we talked about Onan spilling his seed.
Yeah.
They took something that the book says and twisted it into their own destruction, basically.
So where are they finding the other one?
So, for example, a quote from Matthew where Yeshua says, I didn't come to destroy but to fulfill. There you go, he fulfilled it, so it's done away. So this is the kind of stuff they do. Or they look at the stuff that was nailed, okay, when we look in Ephesians. We're going to actually read that in the next part of this. And but they don't understand what was written, those ordinances against us was basically your rap sheet. It wasn't the law. Okay, so they take verses that lend themselves, like the ones we read today. Oh, you see that? The letter kills. Oh, see, so the law's no good. They're just reading into the verses that allow them to make that kind of wordplay into whatever they want.
Well, I see that. Now, another question, it's kind of what you said was when all these people that have written into the Bible and help us to understand things. One I've always heard, because I like history, is Josephus, the Jewish scholar and right. I think historian. Yes or no? Is he a good? What do you
Josephus?
Like him? Excuse me.
I mean, yeah, he's an historian. As anybody should know, anybody who writes anything is writing it from their perspective, no matter how unbiased they may try to be. So Josephus is. Josephus and Philo are some of the main historians from that period of time, or historians about that period of time of Messiah. So I think reading some of the stuff they wrote might give you a reasonable perspective. You don't have too many of them. You got a couple of Greek and Roman historians of the time also that give you some of that. So certainly you're welcome to read those histories, okay? All right, Lisa.
Rabbi, thank you so much for this teaching. I felt like there was a big light bulb going off over my head.
Good.
And it brought me back to 40 years ago. I graduated from college, and I failed the entry math test and dropped out, and then had to go to remedial math at a community college to learn math. And since then, I went 2 years. I was going to get a degree in business, And after going through math, I fell in love with it. And then I missed it. I missed it so much that I changed my major to math. And I was going to become a math teacher until I did my practicum. But the lesson that I am learning through your teaching is that's what you're teaching me about Torah. And we have to go back to the beginning. Just like math, it's a building science. It's a building. It has to build on itself.
Right.
And so that's what I need to learn is go back to the beginning. And I felt like a lesson I learned this week is in watching the very beginning of the Torah study of the Breshit and Adam and Hava. And I consciously had to go back and from my heart forgive them because I was still holding hard feelings about them not obeying. So my question is it another way to say that the spirit of the law is to actually love and obey Yahweh's laws and statutes? And that way we love him because we're obeying him, but we want to do it. We're loving to do it, and we don't feel that we have to do it.
All right, that's part of it, okay? The spirit of the law is going to be specific to the law. So if you're talking about the law of murder, the spirit of it is not even to hate, okay? Or get angry on that kind of level, right? So that's going to be specific to that law. So we have to look at each law and figure out what is the intention of the law, just to keep people from killing each other or to get people to stop wanting to kill each other. All right, so the spirit of it is to get you to stop wanting to kill each other, right? And so that's the intention. So you can't just say, well, what is the intention? The intention is that you figure out the intention of each specific law. What is the point of it? Okay, he says to take one day, this day, Shabbat, and keep it a certain way. Why? Not for the same reason that you're not going to murder somebody, not for the same reason you're not going to commit adultery, not for the same reason you're not going to steal, not for the same reason, okay? And so understanding what is his intention when the law was given, what is he expecting us to really glean from that other than just the mechanics of it, okay? And this is, by the way, the arguments you see all the time in court cases in the secular world. Part of the arguing is when there's a law that's being argued about, they have to go back and figure out what was the intention or the spirit of the law as written. This is a constitutional thing all the time. Whenever somebody's bringing up something that ends up in the Supreme Court and they have to go back to the Constitution, they're always asking this question. They have to try to understand what was the intention of the writers of it. What were they thinking when they gave you that part of the Constitution or that particular amendment, right? So when people are talking about the First Amendment or the Second or the Third, whatever amendment, well, when they wrote it the way they wrote it, but what was their intention? What are we supposed to understand was the point, right? And that's what they'll argue about. And so, yes, ultimately one of the points is that we become more like him. You said that. So that would be love in the context of the Torah observance. I made it a little bit broader than that by saying the intention is that we mechanically keep commandments in the context of the fruit of the Spirit, okay? And so, because if you're walking in the fruit of the Spirit, you're not going to break the murder command because you're not going to hate and you're not going to want to kill somebody. So you understand the context, then it gets a little bit easier. So that's more of a simplified idea. But I would say that we would take them commandment by commandment and say, okay, what is he wanting us to learn about this? Like idolatry. I mean, most of us don't deal with physical idols anymore. There are parts of the world where they do, but I mean, most of us never run into that, okay? So what does it mean for us? Well, how about putting somebody in front of him or somebody that you hold in the esteem and authority that you would have with him? See, there are ways that we can do things that are essentially idolatry without physically having an idol. So we're looking at what is the fullness of the understanding of what he intended here, okay? And you could do that with every single one of the commands. All right, did that help, Lisa? You're welcome. All right, Mr. Wybe.
All right. So I loved your analogies in this teaching. I know you've talked about the Spirit and the law and the letter of the law before, but this is where I would go if I was going to look for that in one teaching where you have all the different analogies. And I wanted to add on one of my own.
Sure.
So I started a few months ago as my side job doing tutoring online. College English is what I do. And I find a lot of different students from all different backgrounds, of course. A lot of different classes, too. It's not just English classes. I can get all sorts of different classes because they all write essays. And some of them are just dealing with grammar issues. Like I can't understand their essay because it's just, it doesn't make sense. So they need that kind of level of help. And then other people are, higher in their level of writing. And one of my tutor company has a lot of PDFs. One of them is the levels of engagement. You can have more of a operational engagement where you kind of help them through, like, this is where you put the comma, this is what words you need right here, because that's how it is. And then there's the conceptual engagement, which is the higher level, and that is where they actually begin to understand why we're doing this, how it fits into their essay, how to make these paragraphs actually make sense, and why that should be. And so in order to do that, because I had been at the operational engagement level of tutoring at first, before my quality assurance people were kind of trying to get me up to provoking the student to think more, right, and to actually ask them, like, to kind of hint. So I'll be like, so where should this comma go? I mean, there's a comma. There needs to be a comma somewhere in this sentence. Where would you put it? And they usually have like 2 or 3, 4 tries before they get in the right place. It's like, that's where it's supposed to go. And even that's hard because they don't know why. And I have to get them to be like, but why is it there as opposed to another place?
Right.
And so because at the operational engagement level, they don't know what they're doing. They're just being told to do it. And that's kind of like the mechanics. This is how you do it. But the conceptual engagement is where I get the aha moments that the students get, where they actually are like, oh, I finally understand that part of writing usually. And so I thought that was just one kind of analogy to what
No,
you're
it's
talking
exactly,
about.
look, you're going to find a lot of things in life. There's that lower level of just the mechanics of it, or the simplicity of do this, don't do that. But then you're always going to need somebody to do that to whatever degree, especially if you don't understand the whys and the concepts behind it, okay? I mean, some things are simple enough, like, well, don't murder, you don't need to be reminded over and over again, you understand what that means. But more complex things like you're writing and you have to figure out whether or not something needs a comma and where to put it, that's a little bit tougher understanding. And you're gonna end up randomly guessing if you don't have the concept. So some things, require much more conceptual understanding. And by the way, I think that after reading Paul, I'm gonna send you Paul for remedial writing lessons. All right, Betty.
In your teaching today, and thank you very much. I don't get to stay down here very often, but today I did. And you said that one of the analogies was we're the letter.
Right.
And the first thing I went to...
The letter of recommendation.
Right.
Right.
But what I went to was the teaching, decisions are the reason we exist. Because...
Making decisions.
I'm sorry. Because in our lives, we have to make decisions every day, whether to stay in this walk, do the letter of the law, or the spirit of the law.
Right.
We have to make those decisions.
Right.
And so my question is, when we make the decisions, is that truly what he's looking at? Is he looking at where our heart is when we make the decisions, whether it's in the mechanics or in the spirit?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's going to look at the decision you made, and he's going to look at why you made it. Okay? A situation popped up, you had choices to make. Okay? Well, you're going to make one of the choices, or he's going to look at you because you didn't make a choice. You avoided it, you ducked it, so that's another choice you made, was to not make a decision. but he's going to look at what is underneath that. Why did you do what you do? He's not as concerned about what you do. Excuse me. He's not as concerned about what you do as why, because that's the character development part. That's the transformative part that's happening or not happening, because the decisions are going to be in line with that development or lack thereof, right? Okay, Janet.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was really good. Always, I like what Chris said about, how there's the different levels that he helps his or tutors his students until they get to this aha moment. And frankly, when I started reading the Torah and learning from you, I had that question. So I'm reading all these laws, but there's nothing that says about love, joy, peace, and all that. I was like, where is that? And I just understand, it's everywhere. It's behind every single law. His compassion, his love, his patience, his kindness, his goodness, his fair, his trustworthy. Everywhere.
True.
And so that's such a revelation that you just gave me.
Good.
So after so many years,
praise
yeah, it's really cool to see that. I'm just excited about this. This is just great. And what you just said about character development is exactly what I was thinking about. Like literally, if you read my notes, like, okay, this Torah walk is a personal development journey. And so we really need to become adults and take it on and do the best we can and with the best attitude, right? Like that would be like the spirit of the Lord, having the best attitude. Like when you're showing up, when you're doing things, like to do it with the fruit. And
all right, so let me take something that Betty brought up
Yes.
that I'm going to bring back to you. So she brought up the teaching, making decisions, the reason you exist. And I will talk to Chris about where there should be a comma or not, or if that's a complete sentence or whatever. But because I just titled it, Making Decisions, the reason you exist. That's about it, is the reason. I didn't, it doesn't word that way. All right, so, but I think actually the reason you exist is to do the personal development of transforming into Him. Making decisions is how we demonstrate how far along the path we are, okay? So maybe the name of that teaching is not exactly correct. It is one of the reasons you exist is to make decisions, but the decision making is simply your pop quiz moment to show how far you are in the transformation. The reason you exist is to transform. So, for people to say, well, I don't understand why you have to teach all this personal development stuff, because that's all this is about. You exist to personally develop into Him. Okay, that is the whole point. It's not to develop some emotion. I just want to, and get all of it's about becoming and transforming into His likeness. Likeness, not becoming literally Him. You're still going to be you in the likeness of Him, which brings you your unique, interesting flavor to the deal, right? All right, but the decision making is how we kind of demonstrate how far along we are in the process. All right, go ahead.
I like that a lot. That's great. Okay, so I have a question. Okay, so when you were talking about on 2 Corinthians 3, and you were talking about Yeshua and how he was literally doing that, what you said, he was giving them the intention behind the law.
Right.
So I've always wondered this, and this is, I don't know, let me know if this is not an appropriate question, and obviously you won't answer, but why was he rejected? Why was he not accepted by,
Who?
in the time, like some
Yeshua
of the, Yeshua, when he was teaching on that? Why was it hard for people to receive him as a Messiah?
Because of the veil. What is the veil? The veil
bubble.
is an understood, accepted, received perception of reality. Okay? So their worldview, when Yeshua said certain things that didn't match their worldview, they rejected him because they had a worldview. Okay? Including their expectation of a Messiah when he didn't do, this was a problem for Judas especially, when he did not do the things he thought the Messiah should do, then they struggled receiving him as he is, as opposed to as they thought he should be. And so it's the veil or the bubble or whatever you want to call it. I call it a delusion bubble. Delusion simply meaning they were not processing or seeing the world correctly. But the way they did see the world, they loved him until he didn't match that. And as soon as he didn't match that, they rejected him, which is the same thing happens with Paul. Same thing happens with me. People think I'm the best thing since sliced bread until I don't match their worldview. Okay? I don't mean worldview like politically. I mean some part of the way they see how the world should be or the teacher should be or whatever should be. And so, then they get rejected. Paul's having the same problem here. You guys are just rejecting me because whatever reason you're going to come up with. But as soon as somebody tries to share something that just does, look, when you talk to your Christian friends, your worldly friends, whatever, and you try to share this stuff with them, their worldview cannot receive this, which is why you don't get anywhere. All right? As a matter of fact, and you're a therapist, so you would agree with me or not. I mean, there's a diagnosable problem that when a delusion is threatened, people tend to react in some sort of violent way. I don't mean physically necessarily, although sometimes, but they will get, some of you ever go and try to push some of your family members' bubbles a little bit and they got nasty and loud with you and hard with you? Because they know that if you're right, it threatens their worldview. This is why politics does the same thing, right? If you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican trying to talk to the other one, if they're not able to have a more broad spectrum ability to process something that's not their worldview, they feel like anybody then is a threat who's in the opposing position. And they get so nasty. And it's just as much the right or the left to some degree, right? I mean, it could be either one. It just has to do with how ideologue they are. They're bought into, sold into a particular worldview. This is the world that has to be this way, or everything is horrible, bad, evil, something, whatever. Okay? And that's where you get these real big problems. And so, in Yeshua's day, same thing. Some people received him, thought it was great, until other people saw him as a threat to their worldview, like the leadership, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, etc. And so they were not thrilled about this man becoming so popular and throwing out there a bunch of stuff that clearly flew in the face of stuff they were teaching. Okay?
Thank you. That was excellent. I have one question about fear and doubt. You actually said that fear and doubt is Satan's main tool. So for a while, I was listening to your Fear of Yahweh teaching, and I actually had it in my car, and I would listen. I don't know how many times I've listened to it, but obviously I haven't learned yet. Because would you say that that's probably what we need to focus on, since that's the main tool, like on trust and emunah?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, look, the whole battle, from cover to cover, from birth to death, right? The whole battle is the battle between, this is inside of you. You got to fight this battle between trust and belief, and it's battling against fear and doubt. Okay? I'm just oversimplifying it, but it's a pretty good oversimplification, okay? This life existence is you going through the war between trust and belief and fear and doubt. Simple as that, okay? Now, does it have lots of nuances and other things? Yes, it does, but I'm just giving you that very broad oversimplification, but I think it really does broad stroke the whole thing, just to give you a sort of a broad stroke picture of it, okay? All right, Micah.
Okay, I gotta just see if you can give me a clearer, more precise look. Who was Paul referencing? Who was he speaking to when he was through all this that we read today? We went through in Corinthians 3 and 4. Is that directed to a specific group? Was he speaking to Gentiles, or was he speaking to the Yehudim, or who was the main audience?
Okay, verse 1 of chapter 1. To the assembly of Elohim in Corinth. Whatever that mix was.
Okay, so it's not really clear.
But again, when you read his letters, it's clear he's dealing with their struggle between those two groups.
So he's dealing with the Jew and the Gentile then.
Yeah,
so
I would think so.
Yeah, okay.
In all of the congregations he worked with, he had a mix, and the mix created problems. Until we all come into the unity of belief, the mix is a problem. By a problem, I mean not that there shouldn't be a mix. They have to come into unity of belief, okay? So the two must become one. This is what we're going to read in Ephesians, okay? In like next week or the week after. I mean, we're going to read this in Ephesians. Go ahead.
Okay, and then to go back to your topic here was the letter is just us existing, right? That's us, the basic mechanics, right?
Right. In that analogy, yes.
And then the spirit was what again?
The spirit was, okay, so again, the fleshly world in the letter just is an existence that leads eventually to death. Okay?
Right.
The spirit is that this flesh can elevate and go beyond this existence.
And by
That's
us,
what we call life versus existence.
by us just doing the letter, that leads to death, right? That
Yeah, just doing the mechanics is not leading to life. It may lead to a more enjoyable time in the existence, because if we're not killing each other and stealing from each other and all the other things, life would be a little bit more enjoyable in the letter, okay? But it's when we do it with the full spirit of the intention, we start to elevate into what brings actual life.
And then the spirit is us, well, like a forward looking towards eternal life or everlasting life.
Well, it's again, the spirit is if we do as intended, then it leads to a result called eternal life, as opposed to the letter only leading to a result called death. Now, you still need to do the mechanics of the letter, but you have to add something to it to make it equal life. Okay?
All right, one more point. Now you said the veil, because I know the veil was like the partition that, you couldn't go behind. Only the priest the Levitical priest could go behind the veil. And I hear it a lot. It keeps coming up in my mind here because my mom uses it. That's an analogy of the veil being torn. It was rent. They keep saying.
But which veil?
That's what I don't know. This is what I just keep hearing them say over and over again. Like they can do anything they want.
Okay.
Because it's rent. It's torn.
Okay. First of all, you need to go back to the Torah studies on the temple that Rabbi Berkson did. And she shows you where each of the veils are, and there's more than one, okay?
Right.
The veil that was torn was the veil that they could see from the mount, which was the outermost veil.
Okay.
Not the one to the Holy of Holies.
Not the one inside.
Not inside, okay? This is the outside veil to be able to, that was rent, okay?
Okay.
That they could have seen from where they were, they could see it torn, okay?
And this was when, apparently, this is the timeline was when he gave his last breath. He said, "It's finished," and the earth shook or whatever, and then all this happened, and it was torn then. But see, the so-called Christians will say that they use that for lawlessness.
They use almost anything they can for lawlessness because they not that they want to be lawless, they just don't like the law. They don't want to necessarily be wild, crazy, and out there, but they just don't want to have to be subject to the authority of the law. All right? Because I know a lot of Christians that are very good people, whatever we would, I mean, they're not doing things that hurt anybody or that would be considered bad or evil or this or that, but they're not submitted to the law because they've been told that they don't have to be, okay? Now, there are others that, and I think most of those people that are actually really good people, if they realize that they should be submitted to, they would be. But there are a lot of other people that are like, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm not going to have a law that tells me I can't do. Especially don't tell me what to eat, and don't tell me what days to keep, all right? And don't tell me how to dress, like wearing seat, okay? Those three things are the big deal, all right?
And don't tell them that they can't keep Xmas, right?
Well, that's the same thing as don't tell me what days to keep.
Okay.
Because if you don't tell me what days to keep, it means I can do whatever I want, all right?
Right. Okay. I had one more point. I think I just lost it, though, when I said that. But I'll finish on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Micah. All right, Taylor.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you for the teaching. Had two questions, if that's fine. So the first.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to enjoy a moment of watching Grayson actually get to hold the baby. Because every time I see you, you're holding the baby.
So you said that. So Paul called it a slight momentary pressure, the things that he was going through.
Right.
So I was wondering, I know that we're supposed to set our minds on him and stay in him and follow Torah and do the mechanics when it comes to it, and then the spirit and all that stuff. But then it also seems that some people, even though they can do all of those things, with the pressure, I always think about, okay, like if I was in that moment, would I still be able to describe it in the way that he is? So what would you say someone would have to do to get to that like level? Is it just like waiting for Abba to kind of just take you through things until you like, this is just the slight pressure. This is no big deal.
I think, okay, so what do you think actually allows him to call it a slight pressure? Well, first of all, what is he doing when he's calling it a slight pressure? He's using a perspective shift, right?
Right.
He's saying, in my perspective, some of these really awful, hard things are really, in the bigger picture of my perspective, a slight pressure. So somehow you have to make that mental leap of perspective.
Okay.
Same thing when it talks about how Yeshua didn't think it was a big deal, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing it, to suffer all of the things that he suffered in dying, knowing that ultimately it would be worth where he would end up, right? That was paying the price for that needed to be paid. So I think it's somehow we have to, as we grow to that next level, we develop our changes in perspective. And so then the other part of the answer is, yes, through various experiences, we come to realize, well, that was terrible, but I got through it and I grew from it and it was beneficial. In other words, you get a different perspective going through a pressure. Okay? Like you go through something very challenging, you're persecuted, or let's see, what are some of the other words that are used here, right? So, maybe you were persecuted and then you realize you weren't forsaken. Maybe you were thrown down, but you realize you weren't destroyed. Maybe you were perplexed, but you weren't in despair. I mean, you could start to see, oh, well, okay, so it worked out okay. So maybe I get a different perspective on what this is all about. You combine that with how much are you looking forward to and believing in what's coming. Okay? Because you can't have that perspective. That was the whole thing about Yeshua. His perspective on what was done to him was based on the perspective of what he knew was coming afterwards, which made him able to go through what he went through. Like Stephen when he was being stoned. Okay? His whole attitude and demeanor was because of the perspective that he had grown into, where he could see, all right, they're killing me, so what? I know what's coming. Okay? This will help you, those of you that might be dealing with things like cancer and this and that, like life ending or shortening of life things, is to realize that if your perspective is right, you handle things differently, okay? That grows over time, okay? So through each thing, hopefully as you actually survive, get through and manage to elevate in each little step along the way, your perspective shifts and grows into the right perspective.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it. Because I was thinking, like, what kind of strength does someone need to have to, like, be like Steve?
A tremendous amount of strength. But it's like, look, let's say I would need to at some point be able to bench press, and for someone my size, let's say 200 pounds. All right, that would be a really good bench press. Well, and let's say right now all I could bench press is 100 pounds. Well, I'm not just going to all of a sudden be able to bench press 200 pounds. I have to do 105, and then 110, and keep working. And it may have to be at a level for a while. And then get to 115, right? But it's gonna take a while to get there. But it's about building up to that strength level. You don't just go from nothing to, hey, they can, arrest me, drown me, shipwreck me, beat me, whatever, and I'm gonna be just fine with that. It doesn't happen just overnight. You have to work your way towards that level of strength of your belief and perspective of seeing, but he survived all those things, And so each time you survive through something, it should strengthen you, okay? So he does have a tremendous amount of strength, but he developed it over time, okay?
Okay.
Good.
Then the next question I was with Janet said about fear and doubt being Hasatan's main tool. So I just recently had a situation where I know that God doesn't like always give people like messages and things like that, but I usually when I have like a gut feeling or something, I'll kind of like, okay, what is this? Going with my intuition and stuff. Should I go do that or should I not go do that? But afterwards, I did feel extreme like fear and hesitancy and all of this stuff and just a whole bunch of not good feelings because of what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. And so my question is like, I thought about like when you do get that feeling, or if God is saying something to you, like if you're reading something and it matches with Torah and all that stuff,
right?
if something is attached to like fear and doubt and everything that I experienced, does that mean that's not from him?
You know what? These are the kinds of things that it could be, but it could just be something internally being triggered. And so this is where, and all of us should hopefully understand, we should always have somebody to run things by, okay? Yeah. So you run it by your husband. He may decide he wants to run it by one of us, okay? But that's where you can get perspective, okay? Whatever you're thinking, feeling, or going through, and you don't really know how to interpret it, you probably need to ask somebody to help, interpret it. And that person isn't just gonna listen to you. They may ask some questions about, well, why do you feel this way about this? What do you think is making you afraid? What do you think? And trying to figure out what the source is of the fear. Now, it could be something that when you say it, the person's like, well, of course, because you shouldn't be doing that. I mean, it may be something that simple, but you don't see it because there's too much emotion in there.
But what if that thing is inherently good and then you still get those feelings?
Well, then you probably need somebody to counsel that can help you figure out why it's triggering you in that way. Okay. Because there may be some underlying problem that happened in your life or whatever that has caused you to have a trigger that even though it's inherently a good thing, the fear is triggering because it's connected already to something, okay? So counsel, you guys still underutilize that available tool, okay? I'm just telling you, you underutilize it. And some of you, it's funny, because I'll say this, and the next thing you know, I got a bunch of you signing up for counseling, and then you sit there looking at me like, I'm like, what can I do for you? You said, I don't know, you told me I need the counsel. I get that on a regular basis, okay? I'm here because you said so. No, when you need something, before you go do something and then find out later it was a big dumb mistake, okay? I say it's an underutilized tool. I'm not saying you have to go do it, okay? But when you have need, you should do, okay? And by the way, sometimes you can get simple counsel like she just did by coming up during the Q&A and asking because the teaching happens to be related to the thing you need some help with. So that kind of works out too, all right? But you should schedule counsel about things that you're not sure how to deal with. So Taylor, when the next thing that happens the next time, you should schedule some time to talk to me about it so I can help you understand maybe what's under it. And then we can just dig that out and figure it out. All right, Delia.
Great teaching, Rabbi.
Praise God.
So much to learn, and I'm so happy and joyful that we have you to teach us, okay? You put the right, oomph in it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so, I'm gonna go back to my cake situation, so, okay.
The one, you mean the cake you cooked and ate?
Yes, the one I cooked and ate.
Yes.
With chocolate ganache. Okay, yeah, anyways, all right. Okay, so.
It doesn't bother me. It doesn't tempt me at all.
Okay, so now, the intention in my heart when I made the decision to make the cake and sin against Yahweh by disobeying him outright, by breaking the covenant of his authority over me.
Were you actually thinking of all of that when you ate the cake?
No.
No, you were thinking about, I want some cake.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the problem, right? Your perspective was skewed because you were only thinking about what you wanted and weren't thinking about any of the consequences of it. So this is a lesson to learn, to start thinking about as you make decisions, is there a consequence of this decision that I'm missing somewhere?
Which was all of this stuff that I mentioned now?
Yes.
Okay.
So had you been thinking all the things you just listed, I don't know that you would have eaten the cake or cooked it or whatever you did. But you weren't thinking about sinning or breaking covenant or any of those things. You're just thinking, I'm craving chocolate cake, okay? All right, you had a sweet tooth moment and you didn't have a cake, so you figured, okay, I'll go ahead and make one. So that's what you did. All right, but the point is, I believe that there was a really good chance you would have made a different decision had you been thinking about those things, but you weren't, okay?
And these things are the things we have to think almost all the time.
Well, it's the idea of it being as frontless before your eyes, right?
Okay.
So decisions need to be filtered through the mechanics and the spirit intention of the mechanics. okay? Because sometimes you have a mechanic problem. This was a mechanical problem initially, which was don't cook on Shabbat, and you went and did that, okay? But there was also an elevation or not elevating problem of your craving overriding everything and blinding you to anything because all you were focused on was the craving. So you have not elevated in maturity in that area yet. Because the more mature you get, the more you have control over how you respond to cravings. All right?
Okay.
Okay,
So-
what does a little child do? I'm hungry, I want cake, I want, right? They just scream all the time. All they care about is their craving. Is that not true? I want a cookie. You're not getting a cookie now, but I want a cookie. And then you give in and give them the cookie anyway. Don't do that, all right?
So,
But when you get elevated, you actually have control over your response to a craving. Some cravings are completely not appropriate, period. Some cravings are timing problems. It's something you could have, but maybe not now. Maybe not, now's the wrong time for it, right? And so, you have to start to mature to the point where you have enough intellectual discipline power to override the emotional craving thing. Okay, now remember, emotions, I've always taught you, are stronger by nature than a thought. Okay? So you must exercise, work out your thought process to have the strength to overcome the emotional desire or craving. Okay? You're not going to stop reacting and starting getting angry and wanting to hate somebody if you don't have enough thought to say, calm down, we don't need to go there, right? Because you've already run to the races with the emotion. Or to the kitchen and the stove with your cake. Okay?
okay, so it's like the self-sovereignty issue, which is like a plague, which is created within my own self, and it has to be eradicated. And so besides...
No.
No?
Okay? You need to have sovereignty so that you can choose to give that authority away or not, but you choose. Okay, I think you guys have missed this. Like I've said this a bunch of times. You must fully be self-sovereign before you can submit. If you don't have full sovereignty over yourself, how can you submit yourself? All right, your problem is your emotions are driving, not you. You don't have any sovereignty. You have all these, emotional things that are driving all over the place without you having sovereignty. Sovereignty is I decide, period. I don't care how my emotions are yelling and screaming, I decide, okay? And that's where you have actually self-sovereignty. And then because I decide, I can decide to submit to Yahweh. I can decide to submit to a husband. I can submit to a boss at work. I can submit, but I have to have sovereignty first, okay? So self-sovereignty is not the problem. It's when the emotional part of you is sitting there with the crown on its head driving everything. Not the intellectual side of you, which is making logical decisions and rational decisions. But you have a crazy king sitting on the throne or queen sitting on the throne who's being run by emotions. Off with their head. I want more cake. Okay? Let them eat cake. Okay, that's when you have a crazy person with a crown on in your head. Because your emotional side is not rational. Okay? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with emotions, but they have to have a rational side of you having at least some steering mechanism to keep them in balance. Okay, if you let them drive, they're gonna drive you right off a cliff. Okay? All right, next.
So if I let myself eat cake, I can lose my head. Okay. All right.
Well, the same person said let them eat cake said off with their head, so it's okay.
What can I do to exercise, do some exercise that I can do so that I can work on improving that so that I gain that self-sovereignty where I'm in control, like you were saying.
All right. Now we're back to the personal development stuff, okay? Listen. Okay? It's hard to do what I'm about to say, but it's simple. All right? It's simple. Doesn't make it easy. You will never get where you're wanting to go until you actually want it bad enough. It takes what's called willpower. You have to have a will. Where there's a will, there's a way. Okay? If you don't want it bad enough, you're never going to win that battle, develop that strength. Look, I've joked many times about my gym membership I don't use, okay? And I still haven't lost any weight because of it or gotten any stronger. Because I have not developed enough of a desire and will to actually show up and do the work. Okay, which I'm going to start here because I've made a commitment now to do that this week, okay? And so, yes, immediately starting this week, maybe even tomorrow, because I mean, it's Sunday, I could do that. But the point is, it's all about your strength of desire and will, okay? And I'm not talking about an emotional thing, although you should have emotions get behind it because it's a logical, rational thought of something that's good for you that you want, okay? Most of the people I know that quit smoking, including Rabbi Tom, okay, years and years ago, is because at some point he decided, I don't want to do this anymore. He actually decided, I don't want to do this anymore, okay? When you make a decision, the word decision has the word in it, the idea of cutting off all other choices. I made a decision, okay? Making decisions while you're here. Now, it takes strength of willpower to actually do the things that are required for the decision you made, all right? I want to lose weight, but I'm going to sit there at 10 o'clock at night watching TV or whatever you're watching and eating chips. Well, that's not going to work. But if you have enough willpower, your brain goes, as you go to grab the bag of chips, no, we've made a decision that we're going to lose weight. That's not part of that decision, not picking them up, okay? I'm just, you want to even be more disciplined, throw everything out that you know you're not going to want to eat, you shouldn't eat, because otherwise you'll eat it because it's there. Well, I don't want to waste the money. What's the difference? You want to put it in your body, you already decided you don't want it? If it's there, you'll eat it. What I'm just saying is make a decision. But it has to come from a place of, I'm mad as hell that I'm not going to take it anymore, like in the movie, all right, Network, all right? Can you get to the place where, in the right perspective, you've had enough? I've had enough, all right? And when you say I've had enough, then you do something about it. Look, I've said this in the Level Up classes. I think I've said it in some of these teachings, all right? All of you, without exception, okay, are at the level, okay, that minimum level that you will tolerate. Because if you wouldn't tolerate it, you'd go higher. You're always going to be at your level of tolerance. You know the really super successful people, you know why they're super successful? Because they're never tolerating it. Wherever they end up, they're not happy. I'm not tolerating this. I got to go to another level. They find wherever they are intolerable to stay at it. Not intolerable meaning it's miserable. Some of them are very successful, but it's intolerable to stay here. All right? I'm 61. I think I'm in fairly good shape for a 61-year-old, but I'm not in the shape I want to be in. But you know why I've been in this shape now for a couple of years? Because I can tolerate it, because I figure, I'm in pretty good shape. I have tolerated this level of fitness, all right? Now, a couple of weeks ago, my blood pressure went up a little bit. It made me start not tolerating. I started paying different attention. Sadly, we have to come to some sort of a bad event to get us to stop tolerating, okay? But the point is, can you make the next move? Okay, Rabbi Tom stopped smoking, did all kinds of things to lose weight and everything else. He looks better now than when I met him 10 years ago when he was smoking and over 100 pounds heavy, whatever he was. Because he made a decision. He wasn't going to tolerate being in that place. Okay? And I'm very proud of him for that. Okay? Because quite frankly, the way he was then, I don't think he would have lived this long. Okay? But he decided he wanted to live longer. He decided he wanted to do other things. So what are you going to do to finally get to that place where you're not going to tolerate staying where you are in whatever area of your life you're not happy with? Okay? Because we all eventually fall to the level of tolerance and then we tend to hover there. It's tolerable. How are you doing? I'm okay. If your answer to everything is okay, okay is a terrible place to stay. Why don't you elevate to something beyond okay? I'm great. I'm doing great. I'm enjoying life. I'm going forward. I'm moving up, whatever. Oh, I'm all right. Why would you want to stay at all right? In whatever area of your life you're talking about, right? Why don't you some days are better than others. I'm okay. You know what that sounds like? I'm tolerating it. I can handle this. Why not aim higher than that? In your relationships, in your health, in your wealth, in your spiritual walk, okay? Well, I'm okay. I don't even mind that being a current status as long as you're not planning to stay there. Why would you want to stay there? Okay? There must be something you can do. Figure it out and do it. But you got to want it bad enough. All right, Olivia.
Shabbat shalom, Rabbi.
Having you in person is
Shabbat
such a
shalom,
delight.
Mishpachah. It's good to see you again.
Yeah,
it's good to see everybody.
Used to seeing you on the screen, but it's great to see you in person.
It is so great to be here.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were just saying, you bypassed what I was going into here. I actually had a question last night about, is it okay to not be okay with where you're at?
I just answered it.
And that was perfect. I struggle with a lot of things, and I really appreciate all your analogies that Yah gave you today.
Hold on, I probably need to clarify something, because you must be okay with what you can't change. Let's be clear. So I'm saying, notice I did say earlier, find out what you can do and do it, but if there's nothing you can do, then you have to find peace with where you are in an area you cannot change. But first, be sure there's nothing you can do. Because if there really isn't anything you can do, okay? I'm 61, there's nothing I can do to make me 41. Can't do it, or 21 or 31 or whatever. But there may be something I could do to deal with blood pressure. I could deal with health. I could deal with what I eat. I could deal with my exercise and movement of my body. I mean, there's whatever I can still do, but you have to have also peace with what you cannot do. Maybe you end up in a wheelchair. Maybe you end up with some sort of something that makes you, disabled in some way. Well, maybe do the most you can with that, recognizing that there's only so much you can do. Have peace. Okay, so then if you say, I'm okay, it should be, I'm okay with where things are and those things I can't change. I'm not okay with the things I'm still trying to change. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to be fair with that, because I don't want people thinking, well, what if you can't do? Then you have to have peace with that. You have to have an acceptance. That's where the shalom has to come in. Okay.
And it's just knowing how to challenge yourself when you're not sure what you can do. This past year, coming into this and learning a whole bunch of new stuff and filling in gaps that I've had over the years, it's been amazing.
You put it closer to your mouth.
Is that better?
Yeah.
It's been amazing just how Yah has brought me in my disability. I was able to go after all those questions that I had in the church since I was a teenager. And finding you and actually finding answers and being able to ask you questions, amazing, because I could not ask anybody any questions. Any online thing I had, I couldn't get any interaction, and you guys were the first people in 2 years that I had interaction with, because I was basically bedbound. So it absolutely meant the world to me that you were able to ask questions and be a part.
Yeah,
do the prayer requests.
Almost every week we're reading your questions on the screen.
Even if I don't get them in, I'm always like, screenshot, I got another 10 questions. Dang it. But so that was great that you talked about being okay. I really appreciate that. But Chell was saying, having such an expectation, we use much boldness of speech. So when I see that having such an expectation, being blue and with red sprinkles, personality-wise, I like having goals and I like having expectation. And it's almost like he's equating expectation with faith. Like it's kind of the evidence of it.
Well, he's expressing that he has a complete confident belief, so he expects. Okay? And so he's bold. Look, the same with you. If you know that you can, like the journey that Rabbi Tom did where he lost whatever he lost, it was a whole bunch of weight. He had to have an expectation that he could. Okay? and a belief that he could. Otherwise, why would you put in the effort? Okay? So Paul's saying, look, I speak boldly because I have complete confidence and belief in the expectation that he has for me as a voice. That's kind of what Paul's talking about. So it's a combination of the belief or faith, the confident belief in faith creates an expectation.
So we are allowed to have that.
Absolutely, you're encouraged to have that.
That's fantastic. And then with, when he says we use much boldness of speech, I kind of put of speech in like parentheses, because it's almost the boldness of speech becomes our action. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Look, and that boldness of speech in your life may be the voice in your head saying, hey, I can do this.
Okay.
You know, and another voice in your head might say, but we've never done that. And you say, but I fully believe and have confidence that we can, and I expect us to do that. And so that's still a voice, even if you're not saying it out loud. You may say it to your husband, you may say it to somebody else, but you know, you can say it boldly because you believe and have confidence that you can do it. All right? Anybody who's ever done anything entrepreneurially and had family members who were not really big fans of that idea of being entrepreneurial and went out and did it anyways because you believed confidently, you spoke boldly, and you went out and made it happen. Knowing full well that people are gonna go, you're an idiot, you're crazy, that'll never work, you'll never do it, you'll not accomplish, blah, 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 blah. All right, that was my life because my family believed in get a job, go to school, get a degree, go get a job, work for 40 years and die, okay? So that wasn't enticing to me, okay? All right, so, you know, and retire and sit around mowing lawns and dealing with your hedges or whatever. That was the whatever. That wasn't enticing to me. But nobody in my family was a big fan of the way I thought I could do it, but I was bold enough to say, hey, I'm gonna start my own business. I'm gonna run a school. I started a karate school in 1987, you know? I was 24 years old, all right? And, you know, I went out and literally rented a storefront and got the licenses and incorporated. I mean, I did all these things without any help and kicking and screaming. Everybody around me was telling me how dumb I was to go out and do these things, all right? Did it anyway, okay? Because I believed and had confidence that I could do it. And I had expectation that it would work, okay? And it did. You can do the same thing.
I love that.
So that voice doesn't have to be spoken to other people necessarily, right? It's got to start with the one in your head saying, hey, I can do this, I'm gonna do this, because I believe I can do it, I believe I need to do it, I have confidence that it can be done and that I can do it, so I'm gonna do it.
So awesome. I'm so happy to have expectation again, because in Christianity, really, it was all him. And I never understood why everybody around me wasn't looking like him and living like him. And I'm like, why am I the only one holding myself to what I at least understood of him? And now knowing Torah and the Spirit coming together, the Spirit of the law and the Torah coming together, it's a beautiful completeness that I've never had.
Amen.
And it's awesome.
Well, let me tie some of that together though, okay? So if you were dealing with, say, from Christianity's point of view, I'm sure they told you that you should be becoming Yeshua-like, all right, Messiah-like. They said we're supposed to transform into his image. But they never told you how. I'm gonna tell you that you should have confidence, that you have full belief and confidence and expectation that if you are doing the mechanics in the spirit of the intention of those mechanics, it will transform you into him. I've given you the way to do it. Keep the commandments in the fruit of the Spirit, understanding the intention, so you're keeping them fully the way he intended, and make that effort and you will start to transform into him. And that you should have confidence about.
That is absolutely beautiful, and it gives me hope.
Amen.
And that is a beautiful thing to have. And this is the last thing, because I know the kids just walked in.
Yeah. Which everybody on live stream is going, oh, it's never going to get to us.
Sorry, you guys.
We lost out again.
I did that to you guys. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, because usually you're one of them.
I am. I feel bad. I reprimand myself. I'm so sorry, Mishpachah.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
I feel so bad.
I think Delia was ready to come back up, and she's missing out. So there you go.
I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. But the last part of what you were talking about, for For then we do not lose heart, for even though the outward man is perishing, it is producing us day by day, renewed day by day, this inward man. Basically, Yeshua and the fruit is being renewed in us. And it reminded me of Ephesians 4:14.
No, hold on. But I think also, the outward body, no matter what you do, it's going through an aging process, and you can't do anything to completely stop that. You might slow it down a little bit. But the inward man needs renewing every day. You have to recommit, remind yourself of what you're committed to and your beliefs and your confidence. So you must renew that inward man day by day.
Definitely.
Okay? The outside man is doing its thing. You might work on it in some way that positively impacts it a little bit, but ultimately you're getting older over time. But the inward man, you can refresh and freshen up and reinvigorate and renew every day.
I've actually appreciated having your little clips every day because that helps renew me in the morning when I'm tired. But it reminded me of Ephesians 4:14. Basically, there's a far more exceeding everlasting weight of esteem that we get, so that we are no longer children tossed to and fro by every wind of teaching.
Right.
It's like when we become more like him, we become more grounded and secure and anchored, and therefore we can have that confidence and that expectation that we will have fruit, and that fruit is growing. And I just appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
Thank you,
Look,
Rabbi.
and let me add this. I know you're surprised. I'm going to add something. Because I don't think I've said it this way before. Don't remember. But maybe some of you will remember. But if we're taking it from the perspective that you just gave, okay, this idea of it being the transformative thing and us growing, it says, so that we should no longer be children, tossed and borne about by every wind of teaching, but now as adults, we have the maturity not to be tossed about by every wind of teaching. In other words, the maturing and growing up is expected in here. So it's not that we're now going to be children not tossed about, but that we're not going to be tossed about because we're no longer going to be children, because we're going to be maturing into the full stature of Messiah. Is that beautiful? All right, good. All right, live stream, anything quick. Well, first of all, to all you on the live stream, the simple solution is to move here. Just saying. We are building a building that will fit all of you, so don't worry about it. But also, you always can take your questions to the zone meetings, okay? So whatever doesn't get answered here, just remember them, refer to this teaching, and ask your questions in the zone meeting. But go ahead, see if you got a few I can quickly jump through, and you're not going to get to go.
Let's see. From Easy D. Herrera, Rabbi, you were on a roll yesterday's Torah teaching about Joseph's example, those unveiled to understand Yeshua and higher level transformation. We exist to transform into Yeshua, a higher version.
Yes. See, I knew we could answer some of these quickly.
From Edwin and Carmen, Rabbi, could this teaching relate to the heart of the matter and how we need to get our heart right in order to walk as how Yeshua walked, Torah observing plus fruit of the Spirit?
Yes. Well, look, I got all these one-word answers. This is great. And go back and listen to all 64 parts.
Let's see. From Rachel E., it's a two-parter.
Yes to part one, no to part two. I'm just trying to speed this up. No, go ahead.
Knowing that Yahweh must remove the veil to see something, is it wrong to speak up when a family member speaks about how the law was done away with and the new covenant replacing the old, or stood up against his words, claiming that Paul and Peter fought over letting go of old ways? It is a jumbled mess I try to stay out of, but sounds like I just need to let it go and let Father.
Okay, see, I was right. No and yes, or yes and no. Okay, so look, in part one, no, don't argue with family members. I mean, you could simply say, look, I don't see it the way you do. I don't think that's what he was talking about, and we're not going to win the argument, okay? And yes, actually, to the second part also, which you just need to let it go to some degree, okay? When you're dealing with people who are still veiled, there's nothing that can happen except fighting, okay? And so we want to avoid that. You know, it says, be at peace with all men if possible, right? So make the effort. I don't argue with people about these things when it does come up. I just change the subject. You know, because it's not going to go anywhere, you know. Look, I tell the story real quick. I tell the story, I'm on an airplane, and we're basically almost ready to leave, and the guy, land, and the guy next to me has been on a long flight from South Africa. He's a pastor, lives in Georgia, and so whatever, we start talking. And so I go through my little game of, does God change? And he says, yes. So I changed the subject. There was no place to go, okay? And so I say, well, at first I was like, what and then he started making an argument for that. He changed, and I said, okay, never mind, let's talk about something else. Then there wasn't anything else to talk about, but whatever. But the thing is, I'm not gonna sit there and argue once I realize what I'm up against, because there's no place to go. You're never gonna win. Some people come to me all the time asking me, well, what verse do I use for this? There are no right verses that solve the problem. The problem is not the verse knowledge, the problem is the veil. Okay, and the verses don't puncture the veil. They're all reading the same verses you are, but they're veiled. They got the bubble. Until he pops it, there's nothing gonna matter what verse, there's no magic verses. Well, if I just use this verse, obviously they'll then see it. That never worked on you either. So I don't know why you think that way, okay? Matter of fact, I know I've met some of you who people came up to you trying to show you this stuff before you were ready, and you rejected it outright. Didn't want to talk about it and argue with them because you weren't ready. A few years later, bubble pop, boom, it's all different. How many of you like that, right? Somebody approached you earlier and you weren't ready, and then a couple of hands. But you could not receive it when you could not receive it, okay? And everybody you're dealing with is the same way. All right, anything else real quick?
Maybe this last one from Gabe Reed in chapter 4, verse 3 and 4. The mighty one of this age is Hasatan, and is the blindness in verse 4 in addition to the veil?
4, 3, and 4, okay. All right, I think the mighty one of this age would be referring to Hasatan. However, it also says that the creator who allows her causes, has given them over to strong delusion and given them over to lies. So now he could have allowed Hasatan to be the means of making that happen, okay? So really the Father's still either causing or allowing anyway. And then the other part of verse 4, when it talks about it blinded the minds of the unbelieving, this is still talking about the same point, the veil, okay? So it's not in addition, it's all part of that same idea of they can't see through this way of seeing the world. They have a very clear, in their mind, picture of how things work, and you telling them it works differently is not going to float very well until a hole is punched in that picture, okay? All right, that'll wrap it up. Hope that was good for everybody.